Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast. This podcast is for and about first-time pilgrims walking the pilgrimage routes in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. Will I find a place to sleep? Will I find food? Will it rain the entire time? These are questions all pilgrims ask when getting ready to walk the Camino, but none more so than the winter pilgrim. Imagine walking the Camino when most services are closed, when only 75 of the 450 plus albergues on the Francés route have their doors open for the winter. Imagine walking into a town after a long day out in the cold and discovering the one albergue you thought would be open isn't. Hi, this is Nancy, and in this episode, we are talking with Chris, who walked the Camino Francés in the winter. But believe it or not, I don't think that is even the most interesting part of his story. For me, what drew me in was why Chris walked, and that he is the father of Savannah, who you met in the last episode. Chris's reasons for walking the Camino and the lessons he pulled from the journey are quite profound. And his Camino story isn't limited to only the Francés route either. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. If you are contemplating a winter Camino, you still have time to get out there before the weather warms up. And if you do go in the next couple of months, you may need to know which of the 450 plus albergues are open in the winter. So make a note of this website, winterpilgrim.com. That URL takes you to a website called Aprinca, but with a simpler URL to remember. And that URL is also in the show notes. If you are getting ready for your pilgrimage and plan to start in April or later, and you are working on or possibly resisting training for your walk, I have an invitation for you. I've recently ventured into the world of video after 3.5 years of audio-only content, and I'm sharing my Camino training plan on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I will be leading a group of 12 first-time pilgrims from Saint-Jean-Pied-du-Port in May, and I know from experience that I have to be fully fit and strong enough to make it over the Pyrenees without incident, so I can be available for my pilgrims. So if you have the same goal, minus leading 12 pilgrims, of course, I hope you'll join me on your favorite social media platform, and we'll get ready together. The videos on social media are unscripted, just you and me talking about your Camino and how to prepare. I'm sharing what I've learned from 20 years walking the Camino, which I hope will help take away any fears or anxiety you might have about making this pilgrimage. The links to my social media pages are in the show notes. Okay, let's go ahead and meet Chris. Chris, hi. Thank you for joining me on the podcast today. Welcome.
Hey, Nancy. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, I'm so looking forward to hearing your story and finding out all about your Camino experience. I am especially excited because I had the pleasure of interviewing your daughter, the fabulous Savannah. So This is really fun for me to now meet Dad after I met that amazing young woman. And she talked you up, by the way. So
Okay, so I better do the same, right?
Yeah, you got to reciprocate a little bit here. Yeah, so she's the one who told me when I met her in Orson about you and how you had inspired her Camino and that your experience was quite different than hers. So I'm ready to get the whole story. Are you ready to tell the story?
Absolutely, yeah, sure.
Okay, let's start where I always start. Let's put the pin in the map. And if you would tell me about your first Camino.
Okay, so I traveled to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port via Bayonne and got the train, and I stayed in Saint-Jean for a day or so just to look around, and then I walked the Francés to Santiago, and then had a couple of days rest there and walked to Finisterre and then on to Moshia.
Wonderful. The interesting thing about this is that you didn't do it in the high season when everyone else was walking in May or September or even the summer. When did you walk your Camino?
I walked it from the 11th of November through to the literally the 23rd of December.
Okay, so we're talking winter Camino. Okay. And then we're going to do a compare and contrast because you have also walked another Camino not in the winter. What was your next Camino?
The next one was the Portuguese, the coastal route, and we did that in August last year. So it was shorter, obviously, but and warmer and busier, and there was a lot of differences.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about your first Camino.
Sure.
What was it that had you walk the Camino in winter? And I think you went by yourself. So how'd you get there?
Well, look, I wasn't planning initially to go by myself. My wife and I, our kids in Australia finish school around about November, and our three kids have gone through high school. And the last one was finishing in November 2023. So together, we needed to book some long service leave, and we thought, what a beautiful bookend to finish their education by saying, see you kids, let's go. You and I, just the two of us, will go for a walk across Spain because we'd seen the movie The Way, and we'd liked a few different ideas about the idea of just taking some time to sort of work through the finish of an era. Anyway.
And probably celebrate the empty nest
Oh,
and
absolutely.
yeah, congratulate yourselves for raising three fabulous kids and all of that. But you had a bit of a
Yeah.
plot twist.
Yeah, unfortunately, my wife got sick with breast cancer again, and this was in early 21, and then it got progressively worse, and she passed in March 2022.
So sorry.
It was a huge shock. Yeah. It just was. I was talking to someone about it the other day, and it was like, the team that you have when you're, doesn't matter whether you're in a footy team or a marriage or any sort of community team, you have different people do different jobs, and I felt like we had a very good mix of who did what and who organised what, and then suddenly when 50% of that was gone, it changed it. It was a little bit rudderless in some ways.
Sure.
And the kids are amazing. They're great people, and they obviously miss their mum. And so I'm sort of trying to play the mum dad thing for a long time. And I think probably I didn't think about the Camino after that, even though we'd planned it probably for 6, 8 months. And then it just popped into my head, like, you know what, this is something that I could do to just celebrate her and to
Mm.
also to just spend some time. I can still bookend that. My son was still going to finish his schooling in the early November, and I was like, it's still good for me. I mean, I'm here, I'm doing things, so why not? And so, yeah, I decided to go by myself. And in fact, I know there was a couple of people asked if they could come, and the only people I probably would have taken was my kids, and I did ask them, and they said no.
No, Dad, you're crazy. Go by yourself.
They were all busy, and but I was sort of, maybe a little bit quietly pleased that I think I needed that walk by myself,
Mm.
and it was, I think, all up that 42 days, 6, 7 weeks, and I really felt like uh, there's parts of that journey that were very frustrating to be by yourself, but
Hmm.
I think the majority of it was absolute delight to be by myself, to just have the time and the absolute power over every moment that I could do however and whatever I wanted to. If I wanted to stop, I stopped. If I wanted to walk, I walked. And yeah, that's not to say I didn't walk with other people, but I think they come in and out of your journey. So
Sure. Well, and as a father who raised three children, your time went to your children and to your work, and to have that luxury of time to yourself must have been quite a gift.
yeah, and it's rare, isn't it? I think it's rare to get so much time and to have something to do, but not really even knowing whether you can do it. Because like it's not like going to a beach in Hawaii and just sitting on the beach. You probably
Little different.
you're going to survive that pretty easily. But to think to cross, a lot of caves across the country, I'd never really spent much time in northern Spain. I didn't really know the terrain. I didn't know what it'd be like. And probably your podcast and a couple of other podcasts were integral in my education for that. So, anyone that's planning to do it, I highly recommend go back to the early Nancy deliberately and listen to some of those hints and ideas, because that was probably 12 months out. I really started to get into okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm going to have to do it properly. So I started not so much trail. I was walking most days, but I was weighing everything. I would cut down the cardboard off the batteries to lose an extra 2 grams. I lost every gram I could, because everyone spoke about the fact that weight, your enemy is whatever you carry.
Yeah, it matters. It really matters when you're carrying your backpack. Yeah.
Oh my God, like it's everything. So I mean, I was able to get it down to probably about 6.5 kilos.
That's amazing for a winter Camino. That's amazing.
Yeah, and maybe with a bit more water in there and that sort of thing. But you didn't need to carry a lot of water because it's quite available.
Yeah.
And especially in winter, you're not probably drinking quite as much as you would be in the summer.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit. See, the podcast has covered so much ground, but I have never interviewed someone who was planning for a winter Camino or who has walked a winter Camino. So you're our guy here. So tell us about the winter Camino.
So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to take just the bare essentials, the clothing, but I have to throw in some rain pants. I have to throw in, obviously some sort of scarf, beanie, jacket. And I had to get everything that was lightweight, because it had to be very lightweight. But I remember when I arrived in Bayonne and it was raining, and I was like, what are you doing? You're going to walk for 7 weeks in the rain. And it was just like, oh no, this is maybe I've made a bad decision.
I want you to know something, Chris. Doesn't matter what the weather is. I think every pilgrim wonders if they've made a bad decision when they're getting ready to cross the Pyrenees.
We caught the train. I caught the train, and I met a couple of pilgrims on that little dinky train in Saint John, and they were sort of like me. They were like, oh yeah, it's going to be cold and wet, and I was like, I don't know whether this is exactly the experience I want, but I'm committed now. So I'm going. And I had that one day in St. John, and I was walking around, and it was a little misty rain, and I was like, wow, it's not so bad. And I thought, well, it'll change. I mean, I'm going for so long, there's got to be a little bit of nice weather in there somewhere. And look, as it turned out, if overall, I probably had constant rain, probably 3 or 4 days out of 7 weeks.
That's fantastic.
The weather was mostly blue skies. I got a tan. I'm just extremely lucky, maybe. I don't know. Most of the rain that I got was sort of in Galicia, right towards the end. There were some cold days, and, some days you'd be walking and you'd be cracking the ice on the puddles, on the Meseta. I remember doing that many times.
That sounds fun.
And it snowed. It snowed in Fonsagrada, and I got at the Cruz de Ferro. I got up there early in the morning. I was the only person that was white with snow. So, I was very lucky with that. But the rain didn't. In fact, when I was walking from Zubiri to Pamplona, I saw a guy coming the other way, and he looked very haggard. And he had walked the Camino, and he was walking back. Some people do that, right? And he stopped for a chat, because I was like, well, I'm not going to ever see him again, so I'm going to have a quick chat with him now. And he was like the weatherman. He gave me a forecast. He goes, oh my God, it's been raining for the last 3 weeks straight on my walk. He goes, it's been horrible. And, he had a cold, and he was in a bad way. And I remember thinking, oh, great, I'm walking into that, but it sort of cleared. I mean, I remember I Googled it later, and there was this big storm that went through that area. in October, and I just completely missed that.
Yeah, October last year was very wet.
Yeah.
So your timing was perfect. Well done.
So I do think I look. My feeling is November, December is underrated.
Hmm.
It's exactly the right time to do it. If you don't if you don't need
If you don't need what?
crowds, lots of people.
Did you stay in the albergues then?
Yeah. So I booked. I booked the route through Orison was closed as of the 1st of November. So you can't go that way. You have to go through Valcarlos, which is absolutely beautiful as well. So I booked Valcarlos, I booked Roncesvalles, and I booked a night in Pamplona, but I didn't book Zubiri. And I just winged it. And I think, um, I think what happens when there's less people, there is less albergues
Sure.
because a lot of the privately run ones will close because clearly they can't make money. But all the municipals are open, and I never once, if I arrived at one that was open, I always got a bed. So you never had to worry about that. So I was so happy not to have bed race. I was so happy not to have the stress of trying to find somewhere. That being said, there were a couple of nights when I arrived after dark because the towns that I'd planned to stay in, they were shut as well.
Okay.
So I did have to walk a little bit further, and I was checking out bus shelters at one stage. So that one night was a little bit tricky, but other than that, there was always somewhere you could stay.
Did you stay in a bus shelter or you took refuge and then walked on?
So I found I can't remember the name of the town. It was is O Hospital something else, but it was literally I arrived at like 6 o'clock and the sun was nearly going down, and the lady who was running it said, "Oh, well, I'm just about to leave, but you can stay." And I was the only person in this one hostel. There was no kitchen, there was no food, there was no nothing, and I had you always carry some chorizo and an orange or something like that, so I had a little bit of food for dinner, and that was it. But always the albergues were amazing. I mean, some of the ones you've talked about, the Donativos, Gramion, places like that, they're amazing places to stay. And I think you need, especially traveling by yourself, there's a sense of community in albergues that you you can never get in a hotel. And I stayed in a few hotels in Pamplona. I stayed in a hotel in Burgos. And a couple other places. But generally, I just really enjoyed the community of albergues.
Hmm. So you brought up something that is always in my mind when I think about the winter, and that is finding food. And I know that some people get concerned about that when they think, hey, maybe I'll walk in winter, but is anything open? What was the availability of the bars? Were the bars open during the winter time?
There was always the bar open. There was always some bar because the locals want to have their coffee and the locals want to have their breakfast. They have their own community experience that's aside from the Camino. They just have a bar because they want to have a bar.
It's their community center. That's where people go to be with their family, friends,
Yeah.
their community. Yeah, very good.
So I would when I'd stop in the morning and for my second breakfast, there was always a lot of locals in there chatting, talking together, and it was warm and inviting because there was always a
Mm.
fire going. And the tortilla España was amazing. Oh my God, that's so good. Yeah, so I never struggled with that. Bars, I think there were a few times that I got to towns and their albergues were not open or the hostels were not open. But that's okay because it's sort of designed that if you just walk another 4 or 5 Ks, there's another town and there's another
Yeah.
opportunity. And that I did that continuously. And I never had to sleep in the bus shelter.
Well, thank goodness for that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, what did you use to find the albergues? Did you have an app or an online resource that you were using to find them?
So when you get your passport in Saint Jean, they give you those 2 sheets of paper with all the albergues on there.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And that was helpful, but you had to cross reference that with Wise Pilgrim or so I used Buen Camino, I think it is, and Wise Pilgrim. Wise Pilgrim probably the most. I found that to be when I did it, that was the closest one for things that were open for November,
Okay.
December. But a couple of times they did say they were open and then they weren't open. But you cross-referenced, and then if it was really going dire, I'd go booking.com. That was,
Okay.
you could generally find something on that.
And so did you check ahead to see if they were open or you just walked in and took your chances?
Generally just walked in, took my chances. Yeah.
It's great. That's great. Many people would say that is the way this is supposed to be done. And it's easier to do that in the winter, in the off months, than it is, say, in May and September. Yeah,
Look, I think so. And part of me, I don't think I wouldn't enjoy it as much running for a band. I think I'm not a fast. I'm so I call myself a tractor, not a Lamborghini, right? So I'm a slow. I'm a diesel engine. I just move slowly.
slow and
I
steady.
plod along all day, right? But so I don't want to be running in the last,
Okay,
5Ks to get to a bed because someone else is they can start past me.
sure.
That's not going to work.
Yeah,
So for me, going at a quieter time really suited my style.
nice. Very good. So, any tips you would have for people considering walking in the winter?
Yeah, look, keep your upper body warm. I walked in shorts most of the time, and 80% of the time, like I actually never walked in pants. I did walk in rain pants a few times, but shorts the whole time. But as long as your chest and your upper body, maybe your head is warm, your body warms up very quickly when you're walking. You know that. And feet are a huge thing. You've got to look after your feet. I tried many different things before I left, and I didn't get one blister in any of my walks.
Fantastic.
But I did get blisters before I left because I was trying out different things, and I was like, okay, that doesn't work. Try something different. Wool socks, good shoes with plenty of room in the toe box, and Vaseline.
Oh, you're a Vaseline guy. Okay.
Oh my God, it just works so good. You take that extra 2 minutes in the morning, put Vaseline on your feet, put your socks on, you're good for the
Done.
day. And then whenever you stop, this is a very little trick. Whenever you stop, you're having that morning coffee, you swap your right sock onto your left foot and your left sock on your right foot. You swap them over because if there's any little balls of wool or anything like that, it'll totally change your feet.
I've never heard that.
It really works.
That's
Just swap them
great.
over.
All right, you heard it here first. What was it like for you to arrive in Santiago the first time?
Look, it was probably a little bit emotional. I mean, when something ends and something begins, there's a grief attached to that. So
Sure.
I felt really good. Like I'd done really well physically, and I felt sore but really excited. And then that was sort of ending, and I was really sad about that. And because I walked in alone, I did meet some friends a little later in the day, which was beautiful. But there's that sense of completion and a beautiful sense of accomplishment, and at the same time, that can be a little bit hollow, right? Because and I was lucky slash unlucky that I was going to walk the Finisterre after that. So I only had two days in Santiago before I started the next part of my walk. So I knew I hadn't finished walking,
Okay.
and I was and it was quiet. Like when I walked into the square, it was early afternoon, mid after 2:30, something like that. There was probably only 50, 60 people in the whole square, and you know how big that square is, right?
Hmm.
And it was very quiet. I mean, later on in the day, there was no one there. So it is a very different experience when I walked in August when
Sure.
we arrived because I walked with someone. Then it was busy, it was pumping and there was a lot going on. Just different experiences.
So, how was the experience for you knowing that your wife wasn't with you and that you were sort of doing this walk for both of you? Did that weigh on you? Did that lift you up? How did that impact your walk?
It felt like it was a bit of a responsibility to make
Oh,
sure that I did it properly. She was a stickler for small details, so
uh,
she would have been when I talked about the rudder. That was sort of what I meant when you you have to become the rudder yourself. So you make a new rudder and you become the thing that the other person was.
Yeah.
So I made sure that my attention to detail was good, and I didn't give myself a lot of room to fail in it because I didn't want to. I mean, we can all fail at things, but I didn't want to because I felt like I was doing it for two people.
Yeah.
Rather than just one. So it was my responsibility to do it properly. And I felt that, with the kids, raising the kids, that sort of thing. You feel like, okay, now I'm mum and dad, so now I've got to think like
Think
a
broader.
mum as
Yeah.
well, right? And
Yeah.
so for my walk, I had to think. That's why I probably got ultra prepared for it, because I didn't want any sloppiness to be the downfall, and I wanted
Okay.
to make sure that I was prepared in a way that if I didn't do it, I didn't do it not because I wasn't organised or not because um, I wasn't lazy in preparation or that sort of thing. You sort of when you go for a walk like that after you lost someone, you definitely start thinking about the past and the future, but you realize pretty quickly that they're still in your present. They're still with you, and I was very lucky with that because I I wasn't challenging myself for answers. I don't think there's answers. They're not obvious answers. The answers are in the wind and the birds and the crunch of the gravel and the feathers that you find as you're walking. They're the answers that you get.
Beautiful.
If you ask questions and expect, an audible answer, then you're going to be disappointed, right?
Sure.
So, yeah, I found a calmness. I think that the solace of being alone was healing too.
Oh, lovely. And it sounds like you did her proud.
Yeah, look, I hope so. She would have been really happy with that, and um, so she would have loved to do it at the same time of year. She doesn't like the cold as much as I do, but she understood that it was going to be that time of year when we initially planned it, and she would have found the joy in all the small things as well. So yeah, I'm very pleased that I was able to do it and complete it for us.
It sounds like you did it really well.
Mm.
Yeah. Really beautiful tribute to her and to the life you shared. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that with me.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about the Portuguese. If you did a compare and contrast, what would you say about the Portuguese route?
Well, Portuguese was different. I did meet another lady, and she decided to come on this trip with me. We talked about it together. And so, from a logistical point of view, it was very different to walk with someone. And it was a different time of year. It was August. So, it was sort of the end of the summer. Everything was open, all the albergues, all the restaurants. There was no problem with food or accommodation. Some we did book ahead. There was a couple of places that we sort of booked out, but you just had so many more options. So I really don't think you need to book ahead in August either. I think the problem child is probably bang on summer from talking to Savannah and other people. I think that's harder, but I think the trick, and you sort of said it over the years, is to just stay off. Don't do the John Briley stages
Yeah.
necessarily. Just walk an extra 5Ks or stop 5Ks earlier, or make sure that if you get to a point and there's nothing there, then look left or right. Go to a town to the left that's actually not even on the Camino, and
Yeah.
and there'll be a hotel there that will have Camino places to see.
Yeah. Always options.
We noticed something very early on. Mel's a faster walker than me, and I don't know. Yeah, have you done the Portuguese?
Not yet.
Yeah, it's a good one. But if you go up the coast, when you start, the first 2 or 3 days are just flat along the coast. They're beautiful, absolutely stunning, but it's very easy walking, and so it's easy to walk with someone, even if they're a little bit faster or a little bit slower. You change it up. But as soon as you hit the mountains, you start to go up into the mountains before you cross into Spain. That's a different story. And I told you I'm a tractor, right? So I'm slower, so I felt like she was feeling like she was holding back for me to catch up, and I was feeling like I was walking too fast to keep up with her. And we actually stopped and had a conversation one day, and I said, "Look, you know what? I absolutely don't mind. I mean, I've walked alone. I like walking alone, but if you want to walk alone as well, and like we can, we'll stop 11 o'clock and have a coffee somewhere. You get there first, and you can order the coffees." And we did that, and that uh, totally changed our way of walking together. So we would start off together, maybe, and then she'd pull if we're going up a big hill, off she'd go a little bit, and I'd see her up ahead somewhere, and then we'd compare the things that we'd seen in the last hour and a half, and then we'd start off together and maybe change it up, and that really worked well because it was sort of like walking by yourself, but walking with someone else. And then at the end of the night, obviously, you had dinner, and we could have a chat about the day. And it was a really nice way to keep it very fresh, the walking very fresh.
Lovely. It sounds wonderful. If you were to go back and walk on one of those routes again, would you walk the Francés or the Portuguese?
Ooh, well, it would be time permitting, obviously.
Yeah.
I love the Frances, and I would like to, maybe even walk that again one day. But they're different. They're like, do you like mud cake or you like cheesecake? Like they're both good,
I
but they
love
are
cake, so I don't
yeah,
discriminate.
they are different. I think the Frances being the OG, the original, it's really set up well
Hmm.
for that. Every 5 kilometers has another town. Generally, maybe a couple of the spots there's not, but it's really well set up and it's really well serviced, and it's a beautiful walk, and there's so many. You go through the different sort of like environmental emotions. You've got the Pyrenees, you've got the Meseta, you've got all the different types in between, and I love that. I think that was a beautiful uh, reflection of life's walk, of the
Yeah,
different moments that you go through. And I know people talk about the different stages in maybe three big parts, but I think there's more than that. I think there's 150 parts to that walk, and there's beautiful things to find in every day.
mm,
So yeah, I think that one was my favourite, but I think the Portuguese is a beautiful walk, and I really enjoyed that. In fact, I'd go back and do that, but there's the inland route as well. I think I'd do that. I'd do that one as well. Yeah, I don't know. There's so many different caminos. I'd like to do the Norte. I'd like to do the Primitivo. I I wouldn't count any of them out, but I really did enjoy doing that. If anyone gets the time to go from Santiago to Finisterre, I think that's
beautiful.
for me that was probably more of a finishing spot than Santiago.
Hmm.
I don't know whether that's weird or not, but
No, it's actually not weird. It's actually not. Yeah.
when I got to the beach at Finisterre, I stripped off and went for a swim in the ocean. It was the 21st of December.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it was a little bit of rain, but it's like, this is what you do, right? You're here
That's
and you walk
great.
around the beach and you pick up some of the scallop shells, and they're everywhere, all over the beach, and you feel like you've really arrived. Yeah, I felt that.
Yeah, I can feel that with you. It's beautiful.
Mm.
Yeah. So what's next for you?
In 2 days, I'm flying with Mel to Japan, and we're doing the Kimono Kodo, which is sort of southeast Japan, and it's through some beautiful forests. It visits some shrines, and it's the other UNESCO walk other than the Frances. And hopefully, if we complete that, we become dual pilgrims, which
Hmm.
is a pretty exciting thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. I think we're going to hear more and more that pilgrims from the Camino de Santiago are going to Japan to do that one. And we'll be hearing more about that, actually. One of my guests on the podcast, who's been on a couple times, Fiona from Australia,
Oh
has
yeah,
walked that, and she's going to come on and talk about it. I would love for you to come back and talk about that one.
yeah, absolutely. I'd love to. I'm probably a little bit hooked on the caminos and the walking now, but I think you can go for a walk anywhere, right? You can go for a walk out of your front door, but when you do any sort of Camino, you've got that service set up. You've got the mentality of the people who are supportive of that. And I think that's what makes it just that little bit easier.
Yeah, for sure. You've got that infrastructure in
Yeah.
place. They know you're coming. Look, there's the pilgrims. We'll take care of you. Yeah, it's really very special. All right. So I caught you just before you're heading to Japan. So this will probably air in a few weeks after we talk. But how long is the journey? How long is the walk in Japan?
It's not that long. It's probably got a week.
Okay.
So it's a much shorter one. You can do longer parts to it, but it's a different mentality. The walk is, you can't just walk and stay places like you can in Spain. You have to pre-book through their website. Culturally, it's very, very different. So
my understanding is that they limit the number of people on the trail at any one time, and so they've got that control valve on it.
Yeah, they have a website where you have to book the accommodation through. There's only one website. You can only do it through that website.
So simple then.
Yeah, it's so simple, but it's when you put your request in, it took 6 weeks for us to get an answer back. So
interesting.
Yeah, so it's very hard to do last minute. I think you've got to look a fair way up for that.
Okay.
Look, that might change or whatever. That was my experience with it. I think it's more difficult, but I'm looking forward to it from a cultural point of view. It's going to be lovely staying in some of the accommodations and going to some onsens after a hard walk.
Say that again. Doing what?
The onsens are like a spa. Like a pool.
That sounds nice.
Hot water spa, right?
Okay, that sounds nice. And it sounds like this is going to be another winter pilgrimage for you because it's probably a little cold in Japan right now, I would think.
Absolutely. So I think it's averaging, I don't know what the exchange rate is for your 16, 17 degrees. I think that's like
60s, low 60s.
60s. Yeah.
That's not
so
bad.
It'll be cool.
Yeah, that's not bad though. Yeah. Well, it sounds fantastic. I do hope we can have you back to hear about that journey. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your Camino experience that I just haven't asked the right question?
Look, I think you just when you're walking, you got to trust your body, listen to it, so that if you need to stop. If you need to eat, and don't be forced to do anything just because someone else is walking faster. Let them go off. You'll catch them at the next town maybe, and if not, then you say goodbye to them and you'll see them again later. But be true to yourself. Make sure that not only reward yourself as well for whether that's staying in a place that has a bath or going out for a slightly nicer meal or something. Make sure that it's for you. Don't do it just because you're trying to fit the square of being a pilgrim. If you need to, I carried my backpack, I walked every step, I did those because that was what was important to me. But there's other people that isn't important to them, and they had just as much fun. So it's, you be honest to yourself, I guess, and don't judge others. That's the other. Right.
Yeah, I think you just hit it. That sums that up. Yeah. Chris, thank you so much for talking with me. I'm really glad to hear your story and to get to know you a little bit.
Oh, thanks, Nancy. It's been lovely talking to you.
Just a pleasure. All right. Well, we'll wrap up there, and I'll look forward to hearing from you when you get back. Thank you.
Brilliant. Bye, Nancy.
Bye-bye.